Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a 2000 rated over-the-board chess player, and today I'm going to teach you how to play the Vienna, and hopefully it goes well as we continue our climb to 2000 Elo. Apologies for the lack of uploads over the past few days. I just graduated from university, which many of you would have seen on my community post, so I've just been busy. Yeah, that's about it. So I just haven't been able to post any YouTube videos. But I've been playing a lot of puzzles on my phone in between traveling and whatnot. So, okay. Many of you who know this channel will know that I love the Vienna and that I have loads and loads of videos on the Vienna on my channel, including a full guide to the Vienna. And those of you who are new here, the Vienna is sick. And if you don't believe me, well, hopefully I can prove you wrong in this game. And hopefully my opponent also plays a move. Okay, after 1.5 minutes of thought, my opponent plays knight c6, the Max Lang defense, and here we'll play bishop to c4. And there's some pretty crazy lines if my opponent goes bishop c5, which we're kind of hoping for, which looks like the most natural move, and it's probably the second most common move in this position. The better move is probably knight to f6, and I think I've had knight f6 in a few over the board games, one notably against a FIDE master, if I remember correctly, which I ended up having a really nice position that game. I think I drew. It was a rapid over the board game a couple years ago, but I have improved a lot since then. And one of the main ideas in the Vienna is to exert a ton of control over the d5 square, because as we know in openings like the Italian game and the Ruy Lopez, which e4, e5 is going to have a lot of similarities to those openings, even if we play it in a different manner, which we are by delaying knight to f3, and which is normally played on the second move, of course, to leave the option of pawn f4 open, right? There's still a lot of similarities, such as if black can execute the move d5, he can potentially blast open the center, and things can get kind of wild. So by playing knight c3 and bishop c4 very quickly, rather than knight to f3, and other potential moves like bishop to b5, which would be Ruy Lopez, obviously, we are very much prioritizing our control over the d5 square, which means that it's also harder for black to stop our pressure on f7, because d5 can't be played to intercept our bishop's scope. Pawn f5 is a very bold move. A very bold move. And I don't think it's a good move. I don't think so. I think we can just go ahead and take. And normally in these types of positions, black would try and play d5, right? And win back the pawn with tempo on our bishop and take the full center. But as I was literally just saying, our setup is kind of designed to stop pawn d5. So if black wants to prepare pawn d5, he's going to have to play knight to f6. He also has to play knight to f6, because I'm going to play queen to h5 check and probably win the game on the spot. I don't understand pawn e4, I've got to say. So queen h5 looks like game over. That was pretty quick. We'll probably make this a double episode, because I can't see this game lasting much longer. Yeah, pawn g6, we can go ahead and take. I mean, black has no play. Knight f6. I think we can play pawn g7. We could also play bishop to f7. King e7. Let's see, can we do something cool there? We could play a move like knight d5. Knight d5, but it's probably easier just to play pawn g7 check, knight takes h5, and then queen by taking the rook. That looks like the easiest thing. Let's do that. And obviously black can't take back, because one, I can probably just take and mate him, but also I could take the rook if I wanted. So you can't take back. I assume pawn e4 was played to stop knight f3? I don't really understand, and yeah, he resigns. So That was pretty simple. We will jump into a second game, don't worry. I'm just going to do a really quick analysis, just to check we played good lines there, but I can't see any of that being wrong. Knight c6, bishop c4, pawn f5 is bad, taking is not actually the best move, really. What's better? d3? Engine prefers d3. For some reason, the lines aren't showing. Sorry, let me just jump into the analysis real quick. I'm interested. How is taking not the best? f5. The engine does like d3. It also does like taking, though. Both of them are fine. But after takes, e4 is just completely losing. Knight f6 is the only move, as I explained, because 1, you have to stop queen h5, and 2, you have to try to play pawn to d5. The engine here likes knight d5 or pawn d4. Pawn d4? Let's say take, then knight d5, followed by bishop g5, I suppose. Those sorts of ideas, very interesting. But yeah, queen h5 is just game over. fg6, knight f6, pawn g7 is the best move. I was trying to make some cool thing work here with knight d5, knight takes, and I don't know, bishop takes, but I couldn't see a mate, so I thought g7 check was much easier because you're in check. If you move, you get probably mated. And if you take my queen, then I take the rook with promotion, and I'm up a rook and a pawn. So, you know. And also, your king's probably still going to get checkmated. So, let's jump into a second game. Alright, are we going to get another Vienna? No, we get a Sicilian, and I'm going to play pawn to a3, known as the Mengarini Sicilian, which I also have a playlist dedicated to this opening on my channel. It's probably one of my favourite openings to play with the white pieces. I've had great success with this online and over the board. Some of the notable games I've had with this is a draw against a 2200 in a classical game. I've also beaten a 2200, I think twice over the board, the same guy. I think one was a classical game and one was a rapid game because we went to the same club. But yeah, it's a really tricky line, and depending on how black plays, we can go for a gambit line. The move that is considered a refutation of this is pawn g6, which is what was played in 2 of the games that I just referenced over the board. And those are some of the lines that I really enjoy, to be honest. This opening I also learned from a Gotham chess course a long time ago, and I just really, really enjoy it. And we can already see, like, you know, my opponent is rated almost 2000 elo. That is higher than, I don't know, 95+% of those of you watching. That's not meant to insult you at all. What I'm trying to get across is the fact that this move is incredibly tricky, to the point that, you know, somebody who is better than most of you watching is having to spend 2 minutes or more, depending on how long he spends, on move 2 because he simply doesn't know what to play against it. And he goes knight to f6, which is one of the better lines, I will say, one of the better lines. And we have kind of 2 options here. We have 2 options. One is knight c3, which is playable, but it's slightly subpar. It's more in line with the general themes of the opening, in my personal opinion. It gets to kind of like a Vienna-ish position, actually, depending on what black does, but it is subpar. The better move, I know for a fact, is pawn to e5. I know that's the best move, and after something like knight to d5, pawn c4, knight b6, I think pawn d4, just trying to take the full center. Or maybe knight f3, then pawn d4 is a good way to go. So I think this is kind of a matter of taste. If knight to c3, we can go for the Vienna setup with knight c3, bishop c4, attempting to stop the move d5. Black can kind of force it through, especially with moves like pawn e6. But after knight c3, if he goes d5 immediately, I think we can go pawn e5 and get an interesting position. So yeah, we can go for either. But I think what we'll do is play pawn e5, because I know this is the principled approach, to take space in the center and kick the knight around. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, so black kind of has to choose either e4 or d5. Now, e4 would probably just get the knight immediately trapped after pawn d3, so the knight goes to d5. And here, we could play bishop c4, but then knight to b6 would come with tempo on the bishop, so then we'd have to drop the bishop back, and then black can play a quick d6 to immediately challenge our e5 pawn. d6 is probably the move we have to be checking constantly. So we could say, okay, let's just defend our e5 pawn with a move like knight to f3 then. And if pawn d6, like c4, knight b6, game goes on. But I think it's better to kick the knight immediately and lash out in the center straight away. We also leave the option of pawn to f4 open before playing knight to f3, if we do it that way round, which is definitely an interesting idea. So I think pawn c4 is the best move anyway. And we're effectively, you know, this move a3 kind of seems pointless. We are leaving the option of pawn to b4 open in the future, though, which, you know, wouldn't be the silliest thing in the world, challenging the c5 pawn, or opening up a development square for the bishop on b2. Because we haven't moved our d pawn yet, the knight could go to the f4 square, but then pawn to d4 would be very strong with tempo on the knight, tempo on c5. If knight to f4, d4, knight to e6, getting the knight out of the way and defending c5, then pawn to d5 looks pretty crushing to me. The knight can hop into d4, we can challenge it with knight to f3, but the point is we'll have pawns on c4, d5, and e5, and I don't really see how black can justify giving up that much space so early in the game. So this can definitely get very difficult for black very quickly. He chooses knight to b6. Some of you may be tempted to play pawn to a4. I don't think that's a good idea because, one, we give black an incredibly easy outpost on the b4 square. a3 is obviously currently defending that square. And also, even if we do execute a5, let's say pawn a4, pawn d6, pawn a5, then I can just go to d7. Right? Because black wants to play pawn d6 to challenge our center anyway. So that doesn't seem very smart to me. So I'm currently considering two main moves. Firstly is pawn d4, as I've mentioned previously. Now, if black plays a move like knight to c6, we play knight to f3, maybe, and we just control the center. Looks very nice. The other move I'm considering is pawn to f4, preparing knight to f3, but playing pawn f4 first and delaying the move d4 for a time where we have better support, and we already support the e5 pawn. So on d6, maybe we can just let black take, and maybe our knight stops any queen h4 ideas. That would be interesting. Or maybe we can even take here with the knight, with a pawn on f4 supporting the knight. That would also be an interesting idea. So if pawn f4, knight c6 doesn't look that good. I'm probably expecting pawn d6. Knight to f3, defending e5. Let's say he takes. Do we take with the pawn or do we take with the knight? Tricky. And also, the queen opens up onto the d4 square, which makes playing the move d4 more difficult, which makes me lean more towards playing d4 immediately, which I think is probably the principled approach to this position. Now, you could argue that my pawns here are an overextension. Probably not the c4 pawn. The c4 pawn looks fine, but maybe the e5 pawn is an overextension in the center of the board. But that remains to be seen. That remains to be seen. That will be the debate that happens over the next 10 moves, probably. So, okay, he takes. And don't immediately take. Let's not take straight away, because we could play knight to f3 and take here with the knight. My only concern is after knight to f3, knight to c6. If we take here, then my opponent can take here. And obviously we can't take with the queen because we lose the queen. We could, though, play the move pawn to c5. Hitting this knight, now that we've cleared the c5 square by having him take us. And also, black hasn't yet played pawn d6, so he can't put the knight on d7. He has to put it into the, like further up the board. So after pawn c5, knight d5 is the only safe square, and after queen takes d4, this knight is not very comfortable, and knight e6 can't be played because you hang the knight. If I reverse the move order and play knight sorry, queen d4 and then knight c6 and then pawn c5, obviously I just lose my queen, which is no good. So pawn c5 looks incredibly strong, and I wouldn't be surprised if we have a very good position already. This knight is just completely stranded. Completely stranded. So I'm expecting knight d5, queen d4, pawn e6, supporting the knight, obviously. But what is the problem with pawn e6? Well, how on earth is black going to play pawn d6 to challenge my center if he plays pawn e6? Because I have 2 pawns controlling the d6 square, and he would have none, because his e-pawn would have abandoned the d6 square, which means that he can't play pawn d6, which means I have a bind on his d6 square. And if I play something like knight c3, knight e4, and knight to d6, that's going to be trouble, because either I get a knight on d6, which is obviously crushing, or he has to take it with like his bishop, let's say, and then I take back with a pawn, and then I have a pawn on d6, which is also probably crushing. So this is actually not a position I've ever had before. 6 moves in, I'm not in book. As you can see by my time usage, I don't know this position off by heart. I don't know the theory of this position, but I know the general ideas. I know the general ideas of the opening, and that's what's led me to finding myself in a very advantageous position 6 moves in, or what I assume is an advantageous position. So let's take on d4 with tempo. And the problem is, yeah, the black knight can't retreat either of these ways, but he can go to c7, which is probably the only good move, because again, e6 leaves d6 as a massive hole. So black still wants to play pawn d6, clearly. Now, if we go knight to f3, which looks like the, normal move, I assume knight to c6 will be played, hitting my queen and my e5 pawn. We then have to choose where we're going to put our queen, and then black will probably try to play pawn to d6. And how do we respond to that? Well, we'll figure it out. So, do we have to play knight to f3? That's a good question. Can we play bishop e4? Sorry, bishop e4. Bishop f4. Exerting more control over d6 and defending e5. Which also means that if bishop f4, knight to c6, I have this nice d2 square for the queen, where I can keep control over d6, which means I have 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers on d6, and black would have 1, 2, 3 defenders, which means that he wouldn't actually be able to execute pawn to d6 just yet, which seems very good. Yeah, I really like that. Bishop f4. Ooh, if bishop f4, he does have knight to e6 forking, though. That's very annoying. Very annoying. What about bishop c4? Is that viable? Or, I was going to say bishop to g5 would be interesting, because it would pin the e-pawn, but I've run into the same problem of knight to e6 forking. I feel like this is an important moment. It feels like an important moment. Bishop c4, knight c6. The issue is my queen needs to hold on to the e5 pawn there, so I should really defend e5. Knight f3, knight c6. I also don't really have d2, because that would block my bishop. I could go to f4, but then I'm also blocking the bishop. Very strange position. Let's say queen a4. Pawn d6. Take. Sorry, no. Yeah, sorry. The knight's in the way. I was thinking I was pinning the d pawn, but the knight's in the way. What about knight f3, knight c6, queen h4, if pawn d6, take. I don't know if that's good. Basically forcing a queen trade and making his king move. He could take with a knight, though. But then again, that would be, bringing the knight back to d8. That can't be that good. Super interesting position. Super interesting. Is knight c3 any good? I don't think so. I wanted to play bishop f4, but his pesky knight e6 move is so annoying. Can I do it? Queen e2, take, pawn d6. Take. Bishop c4. Queen e7 check. Knight e2. That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Let's do it. I like that. If my queen ends up on f4, then I have bishop c4 with tempo. And I can potentially get castled very quickly in that line. Or bring a rook to d1 very quickly. So yeah, he does go for it. Well, if queen d2, we can take on c5. So queen e3, defending the bishop, defending c5. If he tries take and queen to a5, picking up the c5 pawn with check, then I just have pawn to b4, hitting the queen, defending c5, so that's not a problem. If he plays something like take and pawn e6, trying to put pressure here, then just something like b4, and then he can't play d6, which should be good. Knight c6 is interesting. I don't know if it's that good though. Oh, maybe he wants to play queen to a5, and if pawn to b4, he wants to take, and if take, he wins my rook. Maybe that's the point. So perhaps we have to play knight c3, blocking the check. Or b4, just stopping anything coming to a5, and if a5, we go b5. He's maybe trying to come to d4 with a knight. Knight here, but it's bishop d3 should cover c2. Also, with knight c3, we prepare rook d1, which can't be a bad thing. If knight c3, knight d4, bishop d3, we're just developing very quickly. That's fine by me. If knight c3, pawn d6, rook d1, that looks very strong. Or we can maybe just take, I don't know. Let's go knight c3. We're also getting low on time, so I can't be spending too long on these moves now. But I certainly feel like we've gotten ourselves a good position. I am a bit surprised by this knight c6 move, though, I have to say. I was fully expecting something like take and pawn d6. Not sure what I'm missing there. Maybe bishop b5? He didn't like that. I don't see why that's problematic, though. I'm not sure. We'll check with the engine after the game, of course. Maybe I'm missing something obvious. Yeah, that doesn't come with check. Doesn't come with check. So he is threatening to win the c5 pawn, though. And if I play pawn b4 defending, he takes with the knight, and if I take, I lose the rook. Can I just not defend the pawn? Is that the point? Bishop c4 is an interesting move, though. It's a very interesting move, because if he plays take, he can't take because he loses f7. If bishop c4, queen takes, I can take the knight. So oh, no, because after here, it comes with check, so I don't have bishop f7 desperado. Can't play knight to d5 counter-attacking either because it's pinned. Is castle queenside viable? It looks a bit insane, but queen takes, knight takes, knight to d5, going after c7, knight to e6, hitting the bishop and defending. Yeah, how do I defend this? I don't think I can. Bishop c4, queen c5, queen c5, knight c5. Oh, maybe I can go knight to b5 there, because then you don't have knight e6, because my bishop takes. I also think it's the only viable option, so we're going to play it. I don't see anything else. He could play a move like knight to b4 instead, going after the c2 square. But I think I'll probably castle if he does that. Probably castle. And then we're threatening to take. And that gives us time to figure out what to do about c5. An interesting approach from my opponent. Not one I considered. Maybe it was better to go for the immediate pawn b4. But it does feel kind of like an overextension. But then again, a5, I can just go b5. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to check it with the engine. But even if we lose a pawn here, we do get some interesting compensation, I think. Because we have very quick development. And the black bishops can't get out. Therefore, the black rooks can't get out. So, for the cost of a pawn, maybe it's worth the increase... the development advantage, essentially. But we'll see. We'll see. So, okay. If knight takes, do we have anything? Do we have anything? So it's a bit trickier there because my knight on c3 can't move in that particular line. Now, he's not actually threatening anything if he does play knight c5, so that's good. But are we threatening anything? I don't know. Knight c5. Maybe we have knight to b5. Disconnecting the queen and putting pressure on c... Oh, no, it's pinned. What am I on about? It's pinned. Knight c5. Maybe we just go knight to f3 and ignore what he's doing. I don't know if that's bad or not, but we do get basically full development, and black still has a while till he's going to be developed. His pieces are kind of awkward. Kind of awkward. If we can connect the rooks, then b4 would be a threat as well, because let's say knight f3 castles, then our rook defends our rook on a1, so if b4 you can't play take, 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 because the rook's defended. Yeah, he does take with the queen. Okay. So my initial plan was take, take, take with check, king takes, and then we take. But I then realized that queen e3 comes with check, so that doesn't work. So, okay. Take, take. Knight b5. Do you have to go... I think you have to play king d8. And then maybe we can go for something like knight f3, knight g5, going after f7. Interesting. Let's take. We need to play quickly, and I don't see any other options. The king on d8 does make playing pawn d6 more difficult as well, because I could line up a rook. Okay. So, knight b5. The only thing with committing it so early is maybe a6 can just kick it away. Wait. If knight b5, king to d8, I can just take on f7, though. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's cool. That works. It should work. Oh, no, because there is knight to d3 check. So maybe I have to queenside castle. What happens if I queenside castle now? Preparing knight b5. Well, let's say pawn a6. Let's say pawn a6. Then knight d5 doesn't have the same venom because of knight to e6. And my bishop can't take. And you're also hitting my bishop. If knight b6, hitting the rook, opening up my bishop on the knight. If you take my bishop, I take the rook. That's probably fine, because I can get back to b6 very easily. So, here, 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 here. If he goes rook to b8, take, take. Not sure I have enough play there. Not sure. So what about knight to f3? King d6. Let's go knight b5. I need to play quickly. I need to play quickly. So, king d8, I can't take here because of knight d3 check. So, king d8. Oh, maybe I have pawn to b4? King p8 b8, pawn b4, knight e6. Take. If d takes, then castle queenside comes with check. That looks promising. If f takes, does mess up black's development quite a lot. It's going to be hard for him to develop. Is it enough compensation for being down a pawn? I don't know. But it is certainly compensation. Alternatively, if king d8, we could castle queenside immediately. Pawn a6 expected. So we drop our knight back. He can't play pawn d6. Pawn e6. Maybe? He could maybe play pawn to b5. Trying to develop the bishop on the long diagonal. But then we can take on f7. So he has to deal with f7. If he goes king back to e8, then knight to f3, that looks pretty solid. I think we have enough compensation for being down a pawn. I do. I think we have enough. And even if objectively we don't, by human standards we might. Okay. Let's castle queenside. Don't know if it's the best move, but I'm low on time, and this can't be a terrible idea. Might not be the best idea, but it can't be a terrible idea. And what does black play? Knight to a5 is kind of interesting. Trying to play knight b3. But I think we can just take. And then if knight b3, we don't even have to take. We could just play king to b1 and say, well, these knights both want to do the same thing. So that is possible. Okay, pawn b5. Sorry, pawn a6. Knight d4 or knight c3, which is better? Do we want to trade knights? That's the question. Well, surely we don't want to trade knights because we're down material. So let's go knight c3. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it weakened this diagonal if we played knight here. We'll check with the engine. We'll check with the engine after the game. We're not going to play perfectly. That's a foregone conclusion for any chess game. But also, this is a complicated position. But we're threatening f7 currently. e6 looks far too passive to me. Looks far too passive. If e6, I don't know, knight f3 looks fine. And just how is black going to develop properly? It's a tough question to answer. We could play pawn b4 to dislodge this knight as well. If e6 pawn b4, the knight might be trapped, actually. He brings the knight back. Okay, so my initial idea was to play take. And obviously you can't do it with the d pawn, so you have to take with the f pawn. Which is interesting. Knight to e4 is interesting. Trying to come to c5. Feels lackluster. Alternatively, we could just move the bishop. He does get knight d4 if he wants, but I don't think that's a big deal. Bishop to g3. He can't play pawn d6 still. Oh yeah, maybe I need to keep the bishop on the board to prevent pawn d6. Maybe that's smart. Well, yeah, obviously I need to keep the bishop on the board, but probably not trade this one, because this is a very strong bishop. Let's just drop back. Pawn f4, pawn f5 could be quite strong. Kicking the knight, maybe trying to force pawn e6 in and play on the fact that this is pinned. Well, g6 puts an end to that, but we do reserve the right to take if we want to. Pawn f4, bishop g7, knight f3. We do have play. We certainly have play. Knight d5 is interesting. Trying to play knight b6 and cause a bit of chaos. Knight d5, bishop g7, knight b6, rook b8, pawn f4. I do like it. I do like it. Let's do it. Go knight d5. Maybe b5 is strong, so that on knight b6 he can go rook b8. Does line this up, but how am I ever going to play e6? Yeah, b5 looks like the move to me. b5, bishop to a2, I assume. Bishop g7, pawn f4. I don't have to play knight b6. I can delay it. Bishop b7. Bishop b7 looks kind of risky, because then how are you defending this? Yeah, he does play it. Let's drop back. Maybe the rook can come to c8 at some point. Yeah, he goes for it immediately. Makes sense. We could attempt to push this way, but... oh, we could do something like this. That's interesting. And go for b6 anyway. Let's go f4. That can't be a bad move. Also, you know, we don't have much time on the clock. We need to play quickly. We do get 10 seconds increment every move, though, which is a bonus. And yeah, you know, we're still down a pawn, but we do have this very pesky e5 pawn that's hard for black to get rid of. He can't play f6, he can't play d6, really. Both of them look suicidal. Maybe d6 now that my bishop doesn't control d6, but it still looks horrible. I don't know, d6, take, knight f6 is interesting. Even pawn f5. He's not threatening to take, it's defended twice. Do I even have to move the king? I feel like I should. So yeah, it's defended twice, it's attacked twice, so he's not threatening to win it. Oh, he was threatening to take e5. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So moving the king definitely was the best decision. Although my other consideration was knight to f3, which would have defended e5 anyway. Pawn f5 could happen in the future. Also, bishop h6 makes pawn h4, pawn h5 stronger, because black can't play h5 to stop my advancement. So that's another avenue of attack now. And yeah, this is just very interesting, because, you know, black is up a pawn, but he just can't really move. Okay, pawn b4. A nice move. Is king a1 viable? Don't know. Pawn a4, pawn b3, I just lose my bishop, so that's no good. If I take, knight takes, rook takes. Not sure I want to let his rook into the game like that. King a1, if b3, bishop b1, that looks fine to me. If king a1, take. Don't know. That's tough to evaluate. Pawn b4 is a good move. I'm going to take. I'm not convinced, but I feel like it's the best option. Knight takes, rook takes. He's a lot of pressure here, though. Knight e2, knight f4. Don't like that. Do we have to take? Maybe. I don't want to do it, but... maybe I shouldn't have taken on b4. Here. I can take on f7, and maybe try and play pawn e6. Black has done an excellent job here of unraveling the position. b4 was a great move. I completely missed it. I still think we have chances, though. I think knight d4 is tricky, so I'm going to play it. Threatening knight c6. And keeping more pieces on the board. Rook f1 potentially. So I think this is an interesting move. Also, if we win f7, we have ideas of something like take and knight e6, picking up the bishop if the rook moves, for example. Yeah, that's a good move. Or is it? Yeah, it is. I don't know whether I should have taken the knight first, but I don't have time to calculate, so I'm just going to have to trust my gut. Down 2 pawns, we have a lot of open lines. 2 of black's pieces are still not in the game. All of ours are participating, so if we're going to get something from this game, it needs to happen quickly. While the black pieces are still dormant. If they enter the game, black probably wins. Yes, that's the move I didn't want to see. I should have taken the knight. I should have taken the knight earlier. I should have played bishop f4. Yeah, he just takes back like this, and I mean, I don't have enough play at all. I don't have enough. Rook f8 is on the way. This is horrible. Horrible position. I'm going to try and swing the rook over, but I don't think it's going to generate anywhere near enough counterplay. I should have played bishop f4. So in this position, I should have played something like take here, and if take, I have interesting play. That's what I initially calculated, but I thought that allowing this was too much. But I don't know, I was probably wrong. Bishop here. You know, I can generate something. Generate something. It's interesting. Can't play this because of this. I don't know what to play. I don't see any moves. Oh, I should have played this. Oh, that's the obvious move. The obvious move, of course. And then something like that. You don't have time. H3 literally does nothing. It's a nothing move. I was just, 0.8 seconds. I had to move something. It's a good reply. Yeah, I have no choice. All about to come tumbling down. This is too little too late, I think. That would have made more sense, maybe. I don't know. We'll keep fighting, see if black messes up at all. Because, we are down 2 pawns, but, this is black's 2-pawn advantage. It's not mobile at all. But if we lose e5, it certainly will be. I don't know, move like rook e4 might just be a major issue. Oh, I've just blundered, mate. Oh, I just blundered, mate. I didn't even realize. Yeah. Okay, well, that's resignable. Oh, that's so annoying. I don't know why I didn't just play bishop takes f4. My idea was something along the lines of take, rook f1, take here, and this. And that just looks winning. And if take here, I don't know, there has to be something. Gotta be something. At the very least, bishop g6. And I'm only down 1 pawn, and I've got good counterplay. Allowing knight e6 just blocked up the diagonal. Can he do something else? I don't know, like g5? g3 seems to be the same sort of outcome. Sure, I don't have bishop takes anymore, but Ah, that's so frustrating. That's so frustrating. I had play here. Let's jump into the analysis. That's just how it goes sometimes. That's just how it goes. Okay, so 77% accuracy for us, 89.7 for my opponent. Yeah, he played very well. Very, very well. But we definitely had chances. We certainly had chances. So let's see. Knight f6. As I said, we can play knight c3, but e5 is the principled approach. Knight d5, c4. The engine doesn't like c4. It wants d4. Oh, it's the exact same concept. Oh, it's the same concept. You can't play knight c6 of take. And if knight b6, what's the point? Knight c3, knight c6, queen e4, and if d6, this was what I was concerned about. Take, take. Right, so we have knight b5, and the bishop can go to f4, potentially supported by the queen. Huh. Basically, this pawn push was not good. But, okay. Knight b6, d4, take, c5, knight d5, queen d4. Engine wants bishop c4. I didn't even consider this move. What's the difference? What's the difference? I don't know. If we go bishop c4 here, it's the same position, I think. But knight c7 is wrong. The engine wanted e6, which looked ludicrous to me, because then you can never play d6. And I'm just going to put a... I'm going to whack a knight there at some point. b4, knight c6, queen b2. Oh, the engine wants to break with b6. Okay, and I'm just behind in development. Knight c7, bishop f4 is a miss. Knight c3 is better. I thought that allowed d6. ed6, and if you take back. Now bishop f4. And if knight e6 now. Oh, then we pin the knight. That's the difference. And if you take bishop b8, rook b8, and bishop b5, and bishop d7, and castle queenside, and yeah, this is pretty rough. Bishop f4 is a miss because of knight e6, queen e3, and I expected my opponent to take, and I thought I'd have interesting play here, because if d6, I thought I could keep some momentum going. Bishop c4, not so good, though, because the engine likes d5, but I kind of like this position for white, to be honest. I like our bind and our dark square dominance, but the engine isn't so impressed. Knight c6, knight c3, queen a5 is a mistake, bishop c4 is an inaccuracy. Knight f3 is better. Why? Queen c5? We still lose the pawn. Oh, okay. It doesn't want to trade, it wants queen e4. Knight f4, queen f4, let's say pawn d6, which looks natural. Knight b5. Here with tempo. Bishop e6 only move. Yeah, this does look interesting. But, yeah, I went bishop c4, queen c5, knight c5, knight b5. Engine doesn't like knight b5. It would rather I don't commit yet and play knight f3. And if my opponent plays a6 stopping me, then knight d5, allowing knight e6, and then knight b6. Which was the line I'd calculated. I thought this was good for us. And it's equal according to the engine. But king d8, castle queenside, engine preferred rook d1, a6, knight c3, knight e6. Here I should have taken, really. And then played knight a4, b5, knight c5, threatening this, king e8, unpinning the d-pawn. Knight f3, pawn g6, h4, if h5. Okay, yeah, that's not something I'm going to find, but you can see there's a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure. And also no bishop b7. Yeah, bishop g3 is not so good. g6, knight d5, b5 was a good find. I was a bit sad. I thought bishop g7 we were doing very well in this position, which we are. Black is pretty frozen. But he found b5, bishop a2, rook b8, f4, bishop h6, king b1, b4, which was a great move. Yeah, I completely missed that. And it's by far the best move, b4. So take, 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 knight e2. This is the best line. And after knight f4, knight d4 is a miss. Better is bishop e1. I saw this move, like, for a second, and then rejected it because it looked silly. Like, what am I doing? Just hitting the rook? What for? And if the rook goes back... Oh my god. Wow. That's not something I even saw at all. That's so cool. I went knight d4. King e8 is the best move. Here... What? Wait, why is this not good? Rook hf1, bishop e5, bishop f7, king here. What's wrong with this? Oh, both pieces are hanging. So actually, the engine doesn't bless that. Doesn't bless bishop f4. It wants bishop e1. And then bishop d2, trying to pin the knight. That's interesting. Huh, okay. Well, I went rook hf1, which allowed knight e6, which is the only real good move. I mean, it's the only safe square for the knight anyway. You know, if you take on g2, then you're just asking for problems, right? That much is clear. So obviously my opponent didn't play that. He blocked up the diagonal. I tried to create some kind of counterplay, but h3 was just a random move. I wanted to, well, in retrospect, I thought rook c7 was good, but black just trades the bishops, and I'm still completely lost. h3 was a random move. Take rook c7, rook f2, and I completely missed the fact that he was threatening checkmate. But my only move is to trade rooks, and obviously, being down 2 pawns, we're completely lost. So my opponent played the game very well. Obviously, we played this and blundered what would be mate very quickly, so I just resigned. Yeah. That's very interesting. I don't know. The opening... See, the reason that I played this e5 line is because the other option is knight to c3. And this I feel slightly more comfortable with, but I know it's worse. Like, as you can see from the evaluation, it is worse. Maybe I should have stuck with what I was comfortable with. I don't know. Hopefully you guys still learned a lot from the video. If you want to see another game in the A3 Sicilian, where it went slightly better, then check out the video up here. And if you want to see the previous episodes of the speedrun, check out the players down there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.